in an entirely logical world, I could see it where that would be of interest, but I don't see a world where in Dubai that would happen.
Yeah, if you've got extra cash that you're thinking of buying an office with, don't do it.
Hello, team. I am Barney Crompton from Dubai.
I'm Ben Crompton from Abu Dhabi.
And united, we are the two fattest brokers. Thank you for joining us on this balmy, hot summer's afternoon. Today, we are going to talk about non-residential real estate investment.
We talk a lot about residential on this
Solely.
mostly.
Solely, yeah.
People buying houses, apartments.
Now we're going to talk
townhouses.
about people buying commercial units and land, really.
The field.
We may talk a little bit about REITs, but let's focus on those two for now. So I was fortunate enough, and I'm going to do a little name drop here, to sell a building in Jumeirah Lake Towers at the beginning of this year. And yeah, I mean, it was a delve into the world of commercial real estate that I was not particularly
Is it a commercial tower or
with.
residential?
Yeah, it was a commercial tower.
Okay.
Bought,
did you learn?
Bought by one family, and it was to house their companies. And then they were going to lease it out to other sort of friends and families to house their companies as well. It's still a asset class that I am not particularly au fait with, other than to say that from what I've been led to believe, it has been an ailing market, commercial as in office space, for since COVID, when people realised that working from home was an option. Large companies are scaling back because they don't need the space. Yes, people are coming in for, contractually they're obliged to come in for 2 or 3 days a week. However, that office space isn't necessary anymore. So a lot of these larger offices are lying empty.
And I think it's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, as employers understand that productivity went down by quite a lot when people realised that they could work from home and would just have Netflix on in the background and could jump up and make a cup of tea whenever they wanted, and no one was really watching them. I think productivity must have gone through the floor. The
two fat brokers would be even fatter, I think, if they were working from home. Although you kind of do. Yeah.
Harsh. So yeah, I mean, in that respect, from commercial office space, tough going. Very tough going, but as you say, they are coming back. Companies are insisting that people come back and work from their offices. However, I think it's going to be a very long time before the notion of working from home is ripped from people's grasp for forever. I mean, I know of a couple of companies where you have to be in the office 4 days a week. You have to be. But there is that one day where you get to work from home, and weirdly Friday seems to be the most empty part of their office week.
Makes sense.
But also you have asset classes like commercial shops and restaurants and, what do you call it? Food and beverage outlets. Yeah. Watched an interesting article.
Retail.
Watched an interesting article. Can you watch an article?
No, you have to read it.
I watched a program
Unless it moves.
Of members clubs, private members clubs in the UK.
Yeah.
And there's 50 private members clubs in the UK, and all of them are slashing their prices because people just, with the cost of living crisis and things like that, people are realising that a membership like that is probably a folly that they could probably live without. However, the rise of private members clubs here, you've seen the Capital Club in DIFC, and then the Arts Club has taken off hugely, and they're doing a fantastic job. And I know I'm actually personally looking for some commercial space for another private members club. So they seem to be, it seems to be good business here.
Yeah, I mean the good thing about both commercial and retail is you get very stable, relatively stable long-term tenants. If you get residential tenants, they tend to move out and things like that. But what you can do, and actually in the UK, I think 70% of all commercial property is owned by REITs, because it's great business to get big companies in taking multiple floors, because they just stay forever. They're reliable. They pay bills on time, and they.
But these are for larger units. What about the smaller units? You've got a 1,000 square foot office.
Yeah, I mean, So it's a really unique and unusual business here for people to own small offices. And I think as an investment, it's not a good idea.
I agree.
Because
Unless
you're going to
unless
get a
it's for
small
yourself.
company, even for yourself. Now there's a
think?
reason why, yeah. And so you selling this building to this family, you're going to put all their companies in. I mean, there is a reason why you shouldn't own the office that your company is in. A lot of people do it. They think it's a good idea, because your business is not owning real estate. So capitalism is you doing the thing that you're best at, and just do that. If you start doing all these other things all over the place, you dilute your ability to do what you're best at, in the best way that you can.
Just
if you've
saying
got
you need
extra
to
cash,
funnel your funds elsewhere.
yeah, if you've got extra cash that you're thinking of buying an office with, don't do it. Invest it into your business, right? Offices should be owned by companies whose job it is to manage offices. And I would never, ever, say it's a good investment for an individual to own an office, particularly small offices, because you get small companies. Small companies are more likely, to go out of business, and then you can get stuck. It's more likely that you'll get stuck into a court case.
That's why I agree with you in the respect of not owning small offices, because something alarming like, I'm going to come out with the numbers, 7 out of 10 businesses
cats?
fail in the first 3 or 4 years.
Really?
Yeah,
Very possible, yeah.
And they are exactly the kind of people that are going to be renting a 600 to 1,500 square foot office, aren't
Yeah,
they? So,
and they'll ask for a 3-month fit out period, so you won't get any rent for that. It's not a good idea. Minimum, if you can buy a full floor, fine, you can buy a full floor. That would probably be a sensible investment, and try and get one company to fill it. If having 6 companies on your full floor also is going to be a massive pain. So it is a commercial company's job to manage these things. If you're an individual and you're looking for commercial real estate, I would avoid.
So avoid the smaller offices, but if you can afford a large office, which is likely to house a conglomerate or a multinational,
or an office
then it's
building
good.
like what you sold to this company, absolutely, that's great. And companies prefer that, particularly multinationals and conglomerates, because if they expand, you got more floors for them. They don't want to deal with 5 or 6 owners and paying all kinds of different rents. And one of the owners plays hardball and he's going to kick you out, but you've got most of your other offices there, so then you get completely stuck.
So
commercial's
statistically,
weird.
going into F&B, statistically speaking, the shelf life of a restaurant is between 6 and 7 years. After that, people get bored of it. The other competitors open, your fit out gets tired, and you lose your sort of your new feel. Is it a good idea, knowing that you would get a 6-year tenant, to own an F&B commercial property?
Not if you're an individual, I'd still say. Because also F&B goes out of business a lot as well.
That's what I mean.
Unless you can get a cracking tenant. F&B goes out of business, and before 6 or 7 years. And their fit out cost is absolutely massive for F&B. You're talking millions and millions of dirhams just to fit the thing out. And so they'll want like a long fit out period, and it's a problem.
Well, you were going down the F&B route at one stage, weren't you?
Yeah, but that's because I wanted to open a restaurant, but not that I want to invest in F&B, property for sure. So in summary, if you can afford a lot and you want to make it your business, do it. If you want to buy a small bit of commercial or F&B, don't. Land, however, neatly segueing onto that.
Very neat.
Land,
Seamless.
however, and I don't know, and you could tell me a bit more about this in Dubai. In Abu Dhabi, there have been a couple of projects where people have sold, developers have sold plots of land to individuals to build, and some of those individuals have done it on a commercial basis. So they've built a villa and sold it. That happens in Dubai.
Yeah, I think when you're buying land to build a villa, people have a habit here of sucking the profit out of any venture when it's single units like that. For example, Emaar are now selling 2 pieces of land on what they call a golf course, which I disagree with, but anyway, for about 95 million dirhams. Now,
Very reasonable.
very reasonable. Now, if you spend 50 million dirhams on building a 35,000 square foot house on that, you're into it, for argument's sake, including your fees, 150 million dirhams. There is no profit in that. There is zero profit. So when people now are selling pieces of land, they are not allowing any space in it for it to become a commercial venture. They are saying, if you want this piece of land, I'm going to price it that you maybe make 5-10%, which is okay for somebody who's going to use it as an end user, but I'm not going to allow myself to sell under what I think it could be worth and for you to make a profit out of me. So what you need to do with land is you really need to be prepared to, or have timed it correctly, for capital appreciation in the real estate market whilst you're building, which is very risky because you never really know, and you never know how far that market's going to go. So, you know,
Really? Because that's a great business for Emaar, just selling land then. Why would they bother building it themselves if, you know, if they did build it?
because the
they'd only
land
be
is
selling it.
free for them, and then they're building something for
one-
6 million dirhams and they're selling it for 35.
Well, no, but what you're saying is when they're selling it to other people, there's no profit margin in it for other people. So how is there a profit margin in it for Emaar? Maybe on scale when they build massive communities.
Who owns all the land? Emaar.
Yeah, no, but I mean when they build scale so they can make a profit, because your development profit, you know, most developers would expect a 40%, you know, profit
sure.
on the land and the construction and then selling it because of all the hassle and the risk
That's
and
on
the,
a
and the
major
financing.
scale. On
and
a
all that
major
kind
scale.
of
For
stuff.
on a smaller scale, if you're building 20 townhouses, your profit should be slightly bigger.
Yeah. I mean, so you know, it's great business for Emaar just to sell land. But in Abu Dhabi, so we had a few projects, and people made good money out of building, villas and selling them.
It is good profit as long as you understand that for your unique capital appreciation in the land whilst you're building, there is just that there isn't enough or there aren't enough sellers now for people to buy real estate or buy plots. God, I'm so sick, man. I'm really struggling to keep up here.
You're looking great.
Thanks, dude. There's not enough fat in the market in what they're selling for you to then build and sell for a profit without the prices going up over the 3-year period it's going to cost you to build. You can't ever hope to buy in today's value, build in today's value, and if you're selling at today's value, there's no profit in it. None.
That's crazy.
I mean,
Because
you know,
of the risk and
these are
effort that you
single
put in, you're
units.
not being paid for it.
These are single units. Now, if you're looking at, you know, if you're a small business looking to buy, you know, a piece of land where you can build 4 or 5 townhouses, you know, which is your first endeavor, then there's profit to be made there, absolutely. But when you're looking at the residential market, you're usually going to be buying from a previous residential seller, and they hold their price at such that there's no market, there's no appreciation in it.
And you can't really buy land and hold, right? Because when you buy land, the developer, you know, stipulates you need
24
to have
months.
built this, you know, in X amount of time, or
Yeah.
you'll start to.
24 months. There's some communities in Dubai where they didn't, which they're regretting now. There was no build restriction on it, which they're regretting now. But yeah, usually you've got 24 months to build.
Is there a possibility where you could buy an existing villa on a larger plot and then build an extension to that and, you know, make money that way?
It is possible in some communities where the master developer or the community manager still allows you to do that. There's been a shift in dynamic with one of the major developers where the extension you can build is only up to 10% of the size of the property that you own. There's another developer that has increased their rates by 300%.
The rates for the permission.
So the rates are the cost for permission to build on your piece of land. Then obviously you have the additional cost of the actual construction work.
Well, you're buying GFA though, right? So you're buying 100, you know, meters of GFA
You
from
are.
the developer.
You are. And I'm assuming that goes towards the load, the electrical load, the sewage, the maintenance of the areas. You know, obviously if you're going to be building another 1,500 square feet, their assumption is that you're going to have more people living there, and therefore there's going to be more water, sewage, electric, the loads. So I'm assuming that the rate hikes go to cover those expenses. But what's happened in that scenario means that there is less money to be made by doing that as a commercial venture. So in that respect, it's going to slow down the market. But we'll see. You know, it's happened in the past across the board, and people moved on, and the market moved on. So we'll see.
Okay, so buying land, ups and downs. What do you think about service departments? Buying service departments, like as part of a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So you've got some service departments where the hotel will pay you a 60-40 split. So the hotel keeps 60% of the revenue, you get 40, you deal with nothing. You literally just get your biannual paycheck.
Which is great, free property management, basically.
Not free.
As long as you get the
60%.
well, I mean, as long as you get the return, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's. I guess you're hedging then against the holiday market of the UAE, which typically very strong, even in tough times when
Yeah.
the rest of the world was going through it. The UAE did very well from a
What kind of returns in Dubai? We don't really have this product in Abu Dhabi, though. The one has just launched, which is a Rotana, what was it, Arjan by Bloom on Saudi Island. So this is like new for us in terms of the holiday kind of
4 or 5%.
the link to the hotel.
I only
Really
know that
net.
because I'm currently searching for a client of mine, a friend of mine, who is looking to deploy about 70 million dirhams worth of assets in yielding apartments and houses, and we've looked at that side of things, the hotel apartments, the branded residences, and they're bringing you in net 4.5 to 5%.
Really, that's not
Not
that
great, not great, but it's zero headache. So what do you want?
Yeah.
You can buy an investment property and give it to a property manager who do it for 5, 6, 7.5%. So you negate that headache part of it anyway, and you're still going to yield from a regular apartment 7%, roughly.
Yeah.
So I don't really get the attraction for holidays for hotel apartments, but some people like the demographic.
Okay. Is there any market for investing in Dubai in properties that are already being run as Airbnbs?
Yeah,
You
I mean,
seen anything like
Airbnbs
that?
are an interesting one, right? Because if you're buying an apartment now, let's say you're buying an end user apartment for an investment, you're basically buying in whatever the rent was 6 months, 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Whereas with holiday lets, you are holiday let.
Holiday rents.
I'm trying to holiday let. You're
So racist.
Do you know that the owner of Lululemon called it Lululemon for the Chinese market? Woman. That's not a joke. He's openly admitted to it.
That's bizarre.
So with holiday lets, you're taking advantage of whatever the holiday rate is at that time. So in that respect, it's a lot more
flexible, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot more dynamic.
And again, it's no headache, right? So you're basically
Zero.
getting your paycheck.
Do you guys have much Airbnb in Abu Dhabi?
Not much. Not,
You have
I
some
would
though.
say
I've
hardly
looked when I was
any,
staying in a hotel there.
Yeah,
Some.
not much, and it's not big, and it's not particularly profitable.
Oh.
Yeah, so we look at there's one development there, Mayan, which is a nice development, and it's on Yas Island. As we looked at that for Airbnb, but the rent that you get, net is not very different to the long term let.
We're finding that now in Dubai.
You really, there's not a lot of kind of meat on that bone.
Yeah, we're finding that in Dubai now.
Really?
Yeah, the
Okay.
holiday lets are
too
marginally,
many of them.
fractionally. Well, just also the rents have just gone up. The rent rates for 12 months has gone up so much
Yeah, true.
that you're probably still scraping a profit, a higher profit from your Airbnb, but like it's catching up.
So have you ever seen someone sell like, I've got this Airbnb, it's doing this amount of money, and I want to sell it, and I want the price to be based on like my Airbnb returns?
I don't sell Airbnbs.
I mean, have you ever heard of it when you're talking to like
Anecdotally, no, never.
pleb brokers?
Nope.
Okay, because I think that could be it must be. I think it'd be a burgeoning market, right? You want exposure to Airbnb, you buy something that's already functioning and going, as opposed to getting a unit, having to vacate it, furnish it,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
why
go
would,
through the rigmarole.
let's say you're making 9% from an Airbnb, and then if the same unit was making 7% from a annual tenancy, why would you pay the guy extra for something you could just buy a yearly tenancy, get the tenant out, and then have your additional
effort,
income?
because it's hard to get a tenant out in Dubai,
True.
and this is already set up and running. It's already going. You just buy it, and you just take in the checks.
In an entirely logical world, I could see it where that would be of interest, but I don't see a world where in Dubai that would happen. People would rather wait and get a tenant out, take their 7%, get the tenant out, then take their 9%.
I find that in Abu Dhabi as well, that there's people who rent properties still by walking from building to building to building to building, even in the heat of summer, asking the security guard if anything's available. That's still like a really common thing for people like to put in that huge amount of work, as opposed to calling up a broker and saying like, what's
The
available?
security guards must be driving around in BMWs, taking their 5%.
Well, I mean, they don't take 5%, but yeah, they're
I don't know
certainly
why I always
involved.
revert to BMW when I talk about like real estate agents' cars. I don't know what that is. I used to drive a BMW. Great cars.
Yeah, very nice car.
Yeah, I mean, like some people don't like to pay real estate agents. It's that simple. They don't want to pay.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay for something.
Yeah, I guess some people's time, well, I guess here, because working hours are not so long, I'm going on a pretty massive tangent here, that people have got time and they see, if I can spend my time to save money,
they're not going to the office
I will
anymore,
do
Ben.
that. Well, there is that. Yeah, true. Well, I think that's probably exhausted all of our non-residential
But we did end up talking
investment
about
options.
Airbnbs.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Anyway,
You're so kind.
I've been Ben from Abu Dhabi.
I've been Barney from Dubai.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining us.